A millionaire forced his son to marry a homeless woman as punishment, but was left paralyzed by what his son did. The sun rose over New York City, bathing the skyscrapers that stood like giants of glass and steel in golden light. On the top floor of one of these colossi, Jack Thompson gazed at the awakening metropolis from his office. His face, marked by years of tough decisions and relentless successes, reflected a mixture of determination and weariness. Jack was the epitome of the successful American businessman. He had built an empire from scratch, turning a small family business into a conglomerate that spanned from construction to telecommunications. However, this morning his mind wasn't on pending contracts or million-dollar mergers. His concern was much more personal and painful. His son, Ethan. The phone on his mahogany desk vibrated, pulling him from his thoughts. It was his assistant, Sarah. "Mr. Thompson, your son has arrived." Jack took a deep breath, preparing himself for what was to come. "Send him in, Sarah." Moments later, the door opened and Ethan Thompson entered the office. At 28, he was the spitting image of what many would consider a rich kid, dressed in designer clothes, wearing a watch that cost more than many of his father's employees' annual salaries, and sporting an attitude that oscillated between arrogance and disinterest. "Good morning, Father," Ethan greeted, dropping into one of the leather armchairs in front of the desk. "To what do I owe the honor of this early meeting? I hope it's important. I had to cancel my tea time at the country club." Jack observed his son in silence for a few seconds, feeling disappointment and frustration building in his chest. "Ethan, do you know why I've called you here?" The young man shrugged. "I suppose it has something to do with last weekend's party, but I assure you, the media exaggerated everything. It wasn't that bad." "Wasn't that bad?" Jack's voice rose slightly. "You wrecked a yacht worth millions of dollars. There were drugs involved, and we had to bribe the police to avoid a major scandal. Does that seem trivial to you?" Ethan had the decency to look at least a little ashamed, but quickly regained his carefree attitude. "Come on, Dad. It's not the first time something like this has happened. We always fix it. Why all the fuss this time?" Jack stood up from his chair and walked to the window, turning his back on his son. "Because this time is different, Ethan. This time I've made a decision." The serious tone of his father finally seemed to capture Ethan's attention. He straightened in his seat, a shadow of concern crossing his face. "What do you mean?" Jack turned to face his son, his face a mask of determination. "I've decided it's time for you to learn the value of hard work, humility, and respect for others. And for that I've taken a drastic measure." Ethan stood up, anxiety evident in his voice. "Dad, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" "You're going to get married, Ethan." The young man blinked several times, confused. "What? Get married? But I don't even have a girlfriend. What are you—" Jack interrupted him. "You'll marry Olivia." "Olivia? Who the hell is Olivia?" "Olivia is a woman who lives on the street near our main company. I've been observing her for weeks. She's hardworking, honest, and despite her circumstances, maintains an admirable dignity." Ethan looked at his father, as if he had lost his mind. "Is this a joke? Are you telling me you want me to marry a homeless woman?" "It's not a joke, Ethan. It's an order. You will marry Olivia and live with her for a year. You'll learn what it's like to earn a living, what it means to struggle day by day. Only then, perhaps, will you be ready to take on responsibilities in the company." Ethan's face went from disbelief to fury in a matter of seconds. "You're crazy. You can't force me to do this. It's my life." Jack remained imperturbable. "I can, and I will. If you refuse, you'll be disinherited. Not a penny more, Ethan. No more credit cards, no more luxury apartments, no more yacht parties. You'll have to earn a living on your own." The young man was left speechless for a moment, the reality of the situation hitting him like a sledgehammer. "You can't be serious. Dad, please think about this. I'll do whatever you want. I'll behave, I'll work in the company, anything. But this is too much." Jack approached his son and put a hand on his shoulder. For a moment, his expression softened. "Ethan, I'm doing this for your own good. You need to understand the value of things, the meaning of hard work, and the importance of respecting others. This experience will change you, son. It will make you a better person, and someday a better leader." Ethan stepped away from his father, disbelief and fear mixing in his gaze. "This is insane. You can't expect me to accept something like this." "You have until tomorrow to decide, Ethan. Either you marry Olivia and live this experience, or you're out of the family and the company for good." The silence that followed was deafening. Father and son looked at each other, one with unshakable determination, the other with a mixture of anger, fear, and confusion. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "And if I refuse?" Jack returned to his desk and sat down, his posture indicating that the discussion was over. "Then you'll have to find your own way in life, without the Thompson name or the resources that come with it. The decision is yours, son. You have until tomorrow." Ethan stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him. Jack was left alone, looking out the window at the city sprawling beneath him. He knew he had made a drastic decision, perhaps even a cruel one. But in his heart he believed it was the only way to save his son from himself. As the sun climbed higher in the New York sky, Jack Thompson wondered if he had done the right thing, and what consequences this decision would have for the future of his family and his empire. Night fell over New York City, bringing with it an unusual quietness for the normally bustling metropolis. In a secluded corner of the financial district, where imposing skyscrapers gave way to narrower streets and more modest buildings, a solitary figure moved cautiously. Olivia Parker, a 26-year-old woman with hazel eyes that reflected a mixture of determination and weariness, was looking for a safe place to spend the night. Her dark hair, tied back in a messy ponytail, framed a face that, despite the hardships, maintained a serene beauty. She wore worn but clean clothes, carrying a backpack that contained all her possessions. As she walked, Olivia reflected on the turns her life had taken. Just a year ago, she had a stable job as an assistant in a small graphic design firm. But a series of unfortunate events, including the sudden closure of the company and an illness that depleted her savings, had left her homeless. However, Olivia hadn't given up. Each day was a struggle to survive, but also to maintain her dignity and hope for a better future. She worked occasionally in whatever she could, cleaning houses, babysitting, even drawing portraits for tourists in Central Park. Every dollar earned was a step closer to recovering the life she had lost. Tonight, as she searched for shelter, her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of hurried footsteps and heavy breathing. Turning, she saw a young man, dressed in elegant but disheveled clothes, who seemed to be fleeing from something or someone. The man, who was none other than Ethan Thompson, stopped abruptly upon seeing Olivia. For a moment they looked at each other in silence, sizing each other up. "Are you okay?" asked Olivia, breaking the silence. Despite her own precarious situation, she couldn't help but worry about the stranger's evident state of distress. Ethan, still panting, took a few seconds to respond. Yeah, I'm fine. Just needed to get away for a bit." Olivia noticed the contrast between Ethan's designer clothes and his disheveled state. "Are you sure? You seem pretty upset." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of obvious frustration. "It's complicated. My life, it just took a 180-degree turn, and I don't know how to handle it." Something in Ethan's vulnerability struck a chord with Olivia. "Well, if you want to talk, I've got time. Sometimes a friendly ear can help, even if it's from a stranger." Ethan looked at her with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Under any other circumstances, he probably would have ignored someone like Olivia. But tonight, feeling lost and alone, the offer seemed like a lifeline in the middle of a storm. "Why not?" he finally replied. "I don't have anywhere to go right now anyway." Olivia nodded and pointed to a small nearby park. "There are some benches over there. We can sit if you'd like." As they walked towards the park, Ethan couldn't help but notice the grace with which Olivia moved, despite her evident homelessness. There was a dignity in her bearing that puzzled him. They sat on a bench under the dim light of a street lamp. For a moment neither spoke, the silence broken only by the occasional bark of a distant dog and the whisper of leaves stirred by the night breeze. "So," Olivia began, "what brings you out here at this hour looking like you've escaped from a gala?" Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "More like escaping from my own life." He paused, considering how much to reveal. "My father, he's given me an ultimatum, says I have to get married." Olivia raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Get married? And that's bad because he wants me to marry someone I don't know. Someone who—" Ethan stopped, realizing how absurd it would sound if he said it out loud. "Someone who what?" Olivia gently pressed. Ethan sighed deeply. Someone who lives on the street. He says it's to teach me a lesson about real life, about the value of hard work. Olivia was silent for a moment, processing the information. Then, to Ethan's surprise, she began to laugh. It wasn't a mocking laugh, but a genuine, almost musical one. "I'm sorry," she said between laughs. "It's just, well, you don't hear something like that every day. Your father must be quite peculiar." Ethan couldn't help but smile a little. Seen from the outside, the situation had a touch of absurdity that bordered on the comical. "Yeah, I guess so, but for me it's a nightmare. He's forcing me to choose between marrying a stranger or losing everything. My inheritance, my lifestyle, everything." Olivia stopped laughing, her expression turning more serious. "I understand that this is difficult for you, but have you considered that maybe your father has a point? I mean, I don't know your situation, but if he's willing to go to these extremes, he must be really worried about you." Ethan looked at her, surprised by her insight. "Maybe, but don't you think it's crazy, forcing someone to get married like this?" Olivia shrugged. "Life sometimes puts us in situations that seem crazy. Believe me, I know better than anyone. A year ago, I never would have imagined I'd be here, looking for a place to sleep each night. But here I am, and somehow I keep going." Her words made Ethan look at her with new eyes. For the first time, he realized that this woman, despite her situation, possessed a strength and wisdom he had never considered. "How do you do it?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious. "How do you keep going when everything seems to be against you?" Olivia looked up at the night sky, thoughtful. "I guess it's a mix of hope and determination. Each day is an opportunity to change things, to take a step forward, no matter how small. And above all, I've learned to value the things that really matter. The kindness of strangers, a day without rain, a warm meal. These are things I used to take for granted." Her words resonated with Ethan in a way he didn't expect. For the first time in his life, he found himself seriously questioning his own existence, his values, his priorities. I've never seen it that way," he admitted. "I've always had everything I wanted. I've never had to struggle for anything." Olivia smiled at him gently. "And that's not necessarily bad. Having privileges doesn't make you a bad person. What's important is how you use them, how you relate to the world around you." Ethan nodded slowly, processing her words. Maybe my father is right. Maybe I need to see the world from a different perspective." "Well," said Olivia, "if you decide to go ahead with this crazy plan of your father's, at least you'll know you're doing something that could change your life, for better or worse." Ethan looked at her intently, an idea forming in his mind. "Tives, what's your name?" "Olivia," she replied, unsuspecting of the impact her name would have on Ethan. The young businessman's jaw dropped. "Olivia? Your name is Olivia?" She nodded, confused by his reaction. "Yes, why?" Ethan stood up abruptly, a mix of emotions crossing his face. Surprise, disbelief, and something that could be interpreted as a spark of hope. "I can't believe it," he muttered. "It's you. You're the woman my father wants me to marry." Now it was Olivia's turn to be speechless. She stood up slowly, looking at Ethan with a mixture of confusion and amazement. "What? But how is that possible?" Ethan began to pace back and forth, his mind working at full speed. "My father said he had been observing a woman named Olivia, who lived near his company. He described someone hard-working, honest, with dignity despite her circumstances. It's you, it has to be you." Olivia put a hand to her mouth, trying to process this revelation. "This is incredible. Is your father Jack Thompson?" Ethan nodded, surprised that she knew the name. "You know him?" "Not personally," Olivia explained. "But I've seen an older, well-dressed man who sometimes passes by here. Once he offered me a job cleaning at his company, but, well, I didn't have the necessary documents at the time." Silence fell between them as they both contemplated the implications of this chance encounter. The night that had begun as a desperate escape for Ethan, and another night of survival for Olivia, had turned into something much more significant. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice laden with an emotion that even he didn't fully understand. "Olivia, I know this is crazy. We barely know each other. But would you be willing to consider my father's proposal? To marry me?" Olivia looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of emotions. surprise, curiosity, and a hint of something that could be hope. "Ethan, it's too much to process so suddenly. I need time to think." Ethan nodded, understanding her reaction. "I understand it's a huge decision, but what if we give ourselves a chance to get to know each other better? We could meet tomorrow, talk more about this. Maybe we could find a way to make this work for both of us." Olivia considered the proposal for a moment before responding. "Okay, tomorrow. We'll meet here at noon. But Ethan, I'm not promising anything. It's a very unusual situation." "I know," said Ethan, a small smile forming on his lips. "But I think we could both benefit from this. You could have an opportunity to change your situation, and I think I have a lot to learn from someone like you." As they said goodbye, both felt that something had changed. Fate, or perhaps Jack Thompson's cunning, had brought them together in the most unexpected way. And although neither of them knew what the future held, both felt a spark of hope at the possibilities that were opening up before them. That night, as Olivia sought a safe place to sleep and Ethan returned to his luxurious apartment, both reflected on the strange turn their lives had taken. The dawn would bring new challenges and decisions, but for now the night enveloped them with the promise of a new beginning. The midday sun beat down relentlessly on New York City, turning the streets into an oven of asphalt and concrete. In the small park where they had met the night before, Ethan waited anxiously for Olivia's arrival. He was dressed more casually than usual, a conscious attempt not to stand out too much in this environment. The events of the last 24 hours had been a whirlwind of emotions and difficult decisions for Ethan. After his chance encounter with Olivia, he had spent the night awake, weighing his options and reflecting on the unexpected turn his life had taken. For her part, Olivia had experienced an equally agitated night. The marriage proposal, as unusual as it was, represented an opportunity she had never imagined. However, it also brought with it a series of concerns and doubts. Could she trust Ethan and his father's intentions? Would she be willing to enter into an agreement that was, in essence, an arrangement of convenience? When Olivia finally appeared in the park, Ethan couldn't help but notice the subtle change in her appearance. Although she was still wearing modest clothing, it was evident that she had made an effort to present herself in the best possible way. Her hair, previously carelessly tied back, now fell in soft waves over her shoulders. "Hello," Olivia greeted, with a mixture of nervousness and determination in her voice. "Hi," Ethan responded, offering a tentative smile. "I'm glad you came." They sat on the same bench where they had talked the night before, an awkward silence falling between them for a moment. "So," Ethan began, breaking the silence, "have you thought about, our situation?" Olivia nodded slowly. "I've thought about little else since last night. Ethan, before we continue, I need to know something. Why are you really considering doing this? Is it just because of your father's threat to disinherit you?" The question took Ethan by surprise. He took a moment to reflect before responding. "At first, yes, I was furious with my father, and the idea of losing everything terrified me. But after meeting you last night, talking to you, I realized that maybe this is exactly what I need." "What do you mean?" Olivia asked, intrigued by his response. Ethan sighed deeply. "All my life I've lived in a bubble, Olivia. Money, parties, luxuries. I thought that was all that mattered. But last night, talking to you, I realized how empty my existence has been. You've faced challenges that I can't even imagine, and yet there's a strength in you, a dignity that made me question everything." Olivia listened attentively, surprised by the honesty in his words. "I want to change," Ethan continued. "I want to learn to see the world in a different way, and I think you could help me do that." "And what about me in all of this?" Olivia asked. "What do I gain besides a roof over my head?" Ethan looked her directly in the eyes. "An opportunity, not just to improve your economic situation, but to make a difference. With my family's resources, you could help others who are in the situation you've been in. Plus, I give you my word that no matter what happens, at the end of this year you'll have the means to start the life you choose." Olivia was silent for a moment, processing his words. Finally, she spoke. "I appreciate your honesty, Ethan, and I must admit that the idea of being able to help others in my situation is tempting. But this isn't a fairy tale. Marriage, even an arranged one like this, carries responsibilities and expectations. I know, Ethan nodded. And I'm willing to face them. We can establish rules, boundaries. This can be a partnership, Olivia. You teach me about real life, about the daily struggle, and I offer you the resources so you can make a difference. Olivia looked at him intently, searching for any sign of deception in his eyes, but all she saw was sincerity and a glimmer of hope. Okay, she finally said. I accept, but with conditions. I want everything in writing. My rights, my responsibilities, and the guarantee that at the end of this year, whatever the outcome, I'll have the means to start over. Ethan felt a wave of relief and excitement. Of course, we'll make everything legal and transparent. You have my word. They shook hands, sealing an agreement that would change their lives forever. So, what's the next step? Olivia asked. I guess we should inform my father, Ethan replied, and then prepare for the wedding. The word wedding floated between them, laden with meaning and potential. They both knew they were embarking on an unpredictable journey, full of challenges and possibilities. As they got up to head to Jack Thompson's office, Ethan and Olivia exchanged a look of complicity. At that moment, though neither said it out loud, they both felt that beyond the agreement and the unusual circumstances, there was a genuine connection between them. A connection that perhaps could blossom into something deeper over time. The afternoon sun bathed the city as they walked together, two disparate souls united by fate and the decision to change their lives. What awaited them was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, both Ethan and Olivia felt they were on the right path. Jack Thompson's office loomed over them, imposing and cold, like a giant of glass and steel. Ethan and Olivia paused in front of the building, both feeling the weight of what they were about to do. For Ethan, it was facing his father again with a decision that would change the course of his life. For Olivia, it was entering a world completely foreign to hers, a world of power and privilege that until now she had only seen from afar. Are you ready? Ethan asked, his voice tinged with a mixture of nervousness and determination. Olivia nodded, straightening up a bit more. As ready as I can be, let's go. They entered the building, curious glances from employees following them as they headed to the elevator. Ethan noticed how Olivia observed everything with a mixture of amazement and caution, her eyes absorbing every detail of the luxurious lobby. The elevator took them to the top floor in a silence charged with anticipation. When the doors opened, they found themselves facing Sarah, Jack's assistant. Mr. Thompson, Sarah greeted, her professionalism hiding her surprise at seeing Ethan accompanied. Your father is expecting you. Ethan nodded. Thank you, Sarah. This is Olivia. She'll be joining us in the meeting. Sarah guided them to the office, knocking softly before opening the door. Sir, your son is here. And he's brought company. Jack Thompson looked up from his documents, his sharp gaze quickly assessing the situation. He stood up, his presence filling the room. Ethan, he said, his voice neutral. I see you've made a decision. Ethan stepped forward, instinctively placing himself between his father and Olivia. Yes, father. This is Olivia. We've decided to accept your proposal. Jack studied Olivia intently, as if deciphering a complex puzzle. Miss Olivia, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Olivia, to Ethan's surprise, wasn't intimidated. She stepped forward and extended her hand. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Thompson. Although I must admit the circumstances are quite unusual. Jack took her hand, a slight smile curving his lips. Indeed they are. But sometimes, unusual situations lead to the most extraordinary results. Please, have a seat. They sat in front of Jack's imposing desk, the tension palpable in the air. So, Jack began, you've decided to go ahead with this. May I ask what led you to this decision? Ethan and Olivia exchanged a glance before Ethan answered. It was a coincidence, actually. We met last night without knowing who we were. We talked and, well, we realized that maybe this could benefit us both. Jack arched an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Is that true, Miss Olivia? Olivia nodded. Yes, sir. Your son and I had a very revealing conversation. I believe we both have a lot to learn from each other. Jack leaned back in his chair, studying them both. Interesting. Very interesting. I must admit, I didn't expect this outcome so soon. Are you sure you want to proceed with this? We are, Ethan responded firmly. But we have some conditions. Of course you do, Jack said, a spark of amusement in his eyes. Go ahead, I'm listening. For the next hour, they discussed the terms of the agreement. Olivia, to Ethan's surprise and admiration, proved to be a skilled negotiator, insisting on clauses that would protect her interests and those of the homeless people she wanted to help. Jack, for his part, seemed pleased with the turn of events. Finally, they reached an agreement. They would marry in a discreet ceremony in a week. They would live together in a modest apartment, far from the luxuries Ethan was accustomed to. Olivia would have access to resources to start social aid projects, while Ethan would work in the company from the bottom up. Well, Jack said, closing the folder where they had noted the terms, it seems we have an agreement. I must say I'm impressed with both of you. Perhaps this will work out better than I expected. When they left the office, Ethan and Olivia paused in the hallway, letting out a sigh of relief. Are you okay? Ethan asked, noticing the paleness in Olivia's face. She nodded slowly. Yes, it's just a lot to process. 2 days ago I was worried about where I'd sleep, and now... Ethan put a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of support that surprised both of them with its naturalness. I know, it's overwhelming, but we're in this together, okay? We're a team now. Olivia looked at him, a small smile forming on her lips. A team. I like how that sounds. As they left the building into the bustle of the city, both felt a mixture of excitement and fear of the unknown. The afternoon sun bathed the streets of New York, symbolizing the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. What now? Olivia asked, blinking in the bright light. Ethan smiled, for the first time in a long time feeling truly alive. Now we start our new life, together. They walked down the sidewalk, two disparate figures united by fate and choice towards an uncertain future full of possibilities. New York City, a silent witness to countless stories, enveloped them in its chaotic and vibrant embrace, promising adventures, challenges, and perhaps something deeper that neither of them dared to name yet. The days following the meeting with Jack Thompson passed in a whirlwind of activity. Ethan and Olivia found themselves immersed in preparations for their imminent wedding and the beginning of their new life together. For both, it was a period of adjustment and discovery, not only of each other, but also of themselves in completely new circumstances. The apartment that Jack had chosen for them was located in a middle-class neighborhood, far from the luxurious skyscrapers and mansions Ethan was accustomed to. It was a modest but cozy place. 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a functional kitchen, and a balcony overlooking the bustling street. The morning after moving in, Ethan woke up disoriented. It took him a few moments to remember where he was and why. The sound of activity in the kitchen pulled him out of his confusion. He got up and, still in his pajamas, headed towards the noise. He found Olivia preparing breakfast, moving around the small kitchen with a familiarity that surprised him. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and scrambled eggs filled the air. "Good morning," Olivia greeted, turning to look at him with a shy smile. "I hope you don't mind that I used the kitchen. I thought we could have breakfast together." Ethan blinked, surprised by the gesture. "No, not at all. It's very kind of you. Thank you." They sat at the table, an awkward silence falling between them as they began to eat. Ethan tasted the eggs and couldn't help but express surprise. "This is really good," he said, genuinely impressed. Olivia smiled, a slight blush tinting her cheeks. "Thank you. I learned to cook from a very young age. It's a useful skill when you have to make do with little." Ethan nodded, suddenly feeling ashamed of his own lack of practical skills. "I've never cooked anything in my life," he admitted. "I always had chefs or ordered takeout." "Well," said Olivia, her tone softening, "I guess that's one of the things I can teach you." The offer, so simple and genuine, touched something in Ethan. "I'd like that," he replied, surprising himself by how much he meant it. As the day progressed, both found themselves navigating the complexities of their new situation. Ethan struggled with tasks that were completely new to him, making the bed, washing dishes, even operating the washing machine. Each small challenge reminded him of how much he had taken for granted in his previous life. Olivia, for her part, faced her own adjustments. The security of having a roof over her head and guaranteed food was something she still hadn't fully processed. She found herself several times saving leftovers or accumulating toiletries, ingrained habits from her days on the street that would be difficult to overcome. In the afternoon, they decided to go out and explore the neighborhood. They walked through the bustling streets, so different from the exclusive suburbs Ethan was used to. He observed with fascination how Olivia interacted with street vendors and neighbors, her warmth and empathy evident in every interaction. They stopped at a small park, sitting on a bench to rest. Ethan watched the children playing, couples strolling, elderly people chatting on the benches. It was a scene of everyday life that he had never truly appreciated before. "It's strange," he said aloud, almost without realizing it. Olivia looked at him curiously. "What's strange?" Ethan gestured towards the scene in front of them. "All of this. It's so normal. And yet I've never experienced anything like it. I was always so busy chasing the next party, the next luxury, that I missed this." Olivia nodded understandingly. "Life is in the details, Ethan. In the small moments, in everyday interactions. That's something you learn quickly when you have nothing." Her words resonated deeply with Ethan. He turned to look at her, really look at her for the first time since they had begun this strange adventure. He saw the strength in her eyes, the compassion in her smile, the wisdom that her experiences had given her. "Olivia," he said softly, "I think I have a lot to learn from you." She returned his gaze, a mixture of surprise and something deeper in her eyes. "And I from you, Ethan. Perhaps that's the beautiful thing about all this. We both have the opportunity to grow, to see the world through each other's eyes." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in warm tones, Ethan and Olivia returned to their apartment. The day had been a torrent of new experiences and emotions for both, but as they walked side by side, they felt that something had changed between them. A mutual understanding, a nascent respect, and perhaps the seeds of something deeper. That night, lying in their separate bedrooms, both reflected on the unexpected turns their lives had taken. Ethan, staring at the ceiling, realized that for the first time in years, he felt truly alive, curious about what tomorrow would bring. Olivia, wrapped in the comfort of a secure bed, felt a spark of hope that she hadn't experienced in a long time. The challenge had only just begun, but at that moment, they both felt that together they could face anything the future held for them. The weeks flew by, and with them Ethan and Olivia found themselves increasingly immersed in their new reality. The wedding, a simple and discreet ceremony, was behind them, and now they faced the real challenges of their agreement. For Ethan, the biggest challenge was his new job in his father's company. As they had agreed, he started from the bottom, working in the warehouse. The physical labor, strict schedules, and interaction with co-workers who didn't know his true identity were a daily test of his determination. One particularly exhausting afternoon, Ethan arrived at the apartment, tired and covered in sweat. He found Olivia in the living room, surrounded by papers and frantically taking notes. "Tough day?" she asked, looking up from her work. Ethan collapsed onto the sofa, nodding. "You have no idea. I never thought moving boxes could be so exhausting." Olivia smiled understandingly. "Welcome to the real world. Do you want to talk about it?" For a moment, Ethan considered declining the offer, as he used to do in the past when things got tough. But something had changed in him. "Actually, yes," he admitted. It's frustrating. I know I have to start from the bottom, but there are moments when I feel completely useless." Olivia put down her papers and sat next to him. "Ethan, you're not useless. You're learning, and that takes time. Remember why you're doing this." Her words, full of understanding and support, touched something deep in Ethan. "You're right. It's just that all my life I thought I knew what hard work was. Now I realize how wrong I was." "That realization is already a big step," said Olivia. "Many people never reach that point." Ethan looked at her curiously. "And you? How's your project going?" Olivia's face lit up. "It's challenging but exciting. I'm working on a plan to create a training center for homeless people. The idea is to provide job skills and psychological support." "That sounds amazing," said Ethan, genuinely impressed. "How can I help?" The question took Olivia by surprise. I don't know. I didn't want to bother you with this." Ethan sat up, his tiredness momentarily forgotten. "Olivia, we're a team, remember? I want to help. Maybe I don't know much about social work, but I have experience in business. I could help you with the financial plan or fundraising strategies." Olivia's smile widened. "That would be wonderful. Thank you, Ethan." They spent the rest of the evening working together on Olivia's project. Ethan surprised himself by enjoying the process, feeling a satisfaction he had never experienced in his previous business ventures. Seeing Olivia's passion for helping others, her dedication and creativity, made him see his own potential in a completely new way. As the hours passed, the conversation flowed naturally from work topics to personal experiences. Olivia shared stories of her life before becoming homeless, of her dreams and aspirations. Ethan, for his part, opened up about his insecurities, his fears, and the constant pressure he felt to live up to his father's expectations. At one point in the evening, as they laughed over a shared anecdote, Ethan realized something. He felt comfortable, truly comfortable, for the first time in a long time. He looked at Olivia, seeing beyond the initial facade he had built in his mind. He saw a strong, intelligent, and compassionate woman, someone he could learn a lot from. Olivia, feeling his gaze, turned to him. "What is it?" Ethan smiled softly. "Nothing, it's just that I think I finally understand why my father did this. It wasn't just about teaching me a lesson. It was about giving me the opportunity to meet someone like you." The words floated between them, charged with a meaning that neither of them dared to fully explore yet. Olivia felt a blush rise to her cheeks, a mix of emotions fluttering in her chest. "Ethan," she began, her voice soft, us, it's complicated. You know that, right?" He nodded, his expression serious but warm. "I know, and I don't expect anything. I just want you to know that I'm grateful for this opportunity, for meeting you, for everything you're teaching me." Olivia extended her hand, taking Ethan's in a gesture of companionship and something more, something that didn't yet have a name. "I'm grateful too, Ethan. More than I can express." As the night progressed, they continued working and talking, the air between them charged with a new energy, a mutual understanding that went beyond their initial agreement. They both realized that, without intending to, they were building something special, something that transcended the original motives for their union. When they finally retired to their separate bedrooms, they did so with a new perspective. Ethan, lying in his bed, reflected on how, in just a few weeks, his vision of the world and of himself had changed drastically. Olivia, for her part, found herself thinking about the future with an optimism she hadn't felt in years. The challenge that Jack Thompson had imposed on them was turning out to be much more than a simple lesson. It was a journey of self-discovery, of mutual growth, and perhaps the beginning of something beautiful and unexpected. The months passed, and with them, the relationship between Ethan and Olivia continued to evolve. What had begun as a forced agreement was transforming into a genuine partnership, based on mutual respect and an ever-deepening understanding. Olivia's project, the training center for homeless people, was taking shape. With Ethan's help on the financial and management side, they had managed to secure a location and begin renovations. Olivia was constantly surprised by Ethan's dedication, who spent his nights and weekends working on the project, despite the exhaustion from his job at the warehouse. One Saturday afternoon, as they were painting the walls of the future center, Olivia couldn't help but comment on the change in Ethan. "You know," she said, putting down her roller for a moment, "when I first met you, I never would have imagined seeing you like this, with paint on your clothes and working on a weekend." Ethan smiled, running a hand across his forehead and leaving a paint smudge. "I wouldn't have imagined it either, but you know what? I feel more alive than ever." Olivia looked at him curiously. "Really? Don't you miss your old life? The parties, the luxuries?" Ethan paused, considering the question seriously. "Sometimes, yes. It would be a lie to say I don't. But then I think about how empty I felt, how little all of that really mattered. Now every day I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them charged with a palpable energy. Olivia felt her heart racing, surprised by the intensity of her emotions. The moment was interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Jack Thompson entered the room, his presence instantly filling the space. "Dad," Ethan said, surprised. "We didn't know you were coming." Jack looked around, taking note of the transformation of the place and the disheveled but satisfied appearance of his son and daughter-in-law. I wanted to see for myself how everything was going. I must say, I'm impressed. Olivia stepped forward, extending her hand. Mr. Thompson, welcome. We're glad you came. Jack took her hand, a slight smile on his lips. Olivia, please call me Jack. After all, you're part of the family now. The word family resonated in Ethan and Olivia's ears, reminding them of the unique nature of their situation. Jack walked around the place, inspecting the work done. Tell me more about this project. How's everything going? For the next hour, Olivia and Ethan enthusiastically explained their plans for the center, the programs they wanted to implement, and the impact they hoped to have. Jack listened attentively, asking occasional questions and nodding with approval. I'm truly impressed, he finally said. You've both exceeded my expectations. Then addressing Ethan specifically, he added, Son, your supervisor at the warehouse has given me excellent reports about your performance. He says you're one of the most dedicated workers he's had. Ethan straightened up, a mixture of pride and surprise on his face. Thank you, Dad, that means a lot to me. Jack nodded, a look of satisfaction on his face. I think it's time for you to take the next step. Starting Monday, you'll begin working in the finance department. It will be a different challenge, but I believe you're ready. The news took Ethan by surprise. He looked at Olivia, seeking her reaction. She smiled at him, her pride evident. Thank you, Dad, Ethan said. I promise I won't let you down. Jack put a hand on his son's shoulder. You don't anymore, Ethan, you don't anymore. Before leaving, Jack turned to Olivia. And to you, Olivia, I want to thank you. You've been an extraordinary influence on my son. Olivia, feeling a bit overwhelmed, responded, Thank you, Jack. But the truth is that Ethan has also been a great influence on me. We've learned a lot from each other. After Jack left, Ethan and Olivia stood in silence for a moment, processing everything that had happened. Well, Ethan finally said, it looks like things are changing again. Olivia nodded, a shadow of concern crossing her face. How do you feel about it? Are you ready to return to the corporate world? Ethan looked at her, seeing the worry in her eyes. I'm excited about the challenge, but also a bit nervous. But Olivia, I want you to know something. Nothing is going to change between us. I'll remain dedicated to this project, to our work together. Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. I'm glad to hear that. I wouldn't want to lose what we've built. Ethan moved closer to her, taking her hands in his. We won't lose it. In fact, I think this will only make our work stronger. I'll be able to contribute more to the project from my new position. They looked into each other's eyes, the intensity of their emotions palpable in the air. Without thinking, Ethan leaned forward, his lips meeting Olivia's in a soft and tentative kiss. When they separated, they were both breathless, surprised by what had just happened. I'm sorry, Ethan began, but Olivia interrupted him. Don't be sorry, she said softly. I've been feeling it coming for a while too. They smiled at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Their relationship had taken another unexpected turn, but this time it was one they had both secretly been hoping for. As the sun set outside, bathing the room in a golden light, Ethan and Olivia realized they were on the threshold of a new chapter in their lives, one that promised challenges, but also the possibility of something beautiful and lasting. With their hands intertwined, they returned to work, painting the walls of the center that symbolized not only their joint project, but also the transformation of their lives and the beginning of something new and exciting between them. The following months were a whirlwind of activity for Ethan and Olivia. Ethan's new position in the finance department of Thompson Enterprises kept him busy for long hours, while Olivia dedicated herself body and soul to the opening and operation of the training center. Despite their busy schedules, both strived to keep alive the connection they had developed. They spent their evenings sharing the day's experiences, discussing the challenges they faced, and planning the future of the center. One night, as they were having dinner on the small balcony of their apartment, Olivia noticed that Ethan seemed worried. Is everything okay? She asked, placing her hand on his. Ethan sighed, putting down his fork. It's complicated. Today I discovered some irregularities in the company accounts. It's nothing illegal, but there are decisions being made that don't seem ethical to me. Olivia looked at him with concern. "Have you talked to your father about this?" "Not yet," Ethan replied, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to approach the subject. Before I probably would have ignored it, but now I can't stop thinking about how these decisions affect real people." Olivia smiled softly, proud of the transformation she saw in Ethan. "You've changed a lot, you know? The Ethan I met months ago wouldn't have even noticed these problems." Ethan looked at her, his eyes full of emotion. "It's thanks to you, Olivia. You've taught me to see the world in a different way." He leaned towards her, kissing her softly. When they separated, Olivia spoke. "I think you should talk to your father. I know it's difficult, but it's the right thing to do." Ethan nodded, knowing she was right. "I will. Tomorrow." The next day, Ethan found himself in front of his father's office door, his heart beating hard. He took a deep breath and knocked. "Come in," Jack's voice was heard from inside. Ethan entered, closing the door behind him. "Dad, we need to talk." Jack looked up from his documents, noticing the seriousness on his son's face. "What's going on, Ethan?" For the next hour, Ethan laid out his concerns, backing them up with the data he had collected. To his surprise, Jack listened attentively without interrupting. When Ethan finished, Jack remained silent for a moment before speaking. "I'm proud of you, son." Ethan blinked, confused. "What?" Jack stood up, walking around his desk to approach Ethan. "A year ago, you wouldn't have noticed these things, much less cared about them. You've grown, Ethan. You've become the man I always knew you could be." Emotion overwhelmed Ethan, years of seeking his father's approval culminating in this moment. "Thank you, Dad. But what are we going to do about these problems?" Jack smiled. "We'll address them together. I want you to lead a team to restructure these areas of the company. We'll do things the right way, ethically and sustainably." Meanwhile, Olivia was facing her own challenges at the training center. The project had grown beyond her initial expectations, and she found herself dealing with funding and logistical issues. One afternoon, while reviewing the center's accounts, Olivia realized they would need more funds to keep all the programs running. Frustrated, she ran her hands over her face, wondering how they would solve this problem. At that moment, the door to her office opened and Ethan entered, a smile on his face. "How's everything going, love?" he asked, immediately noticing the concern on Olivia's face. She explained the situation, and to her surprise, Ethan smiled even more. "I think I have the perfect solution," he said, sitting across from her. "I've been talking to Dad about creating a corporate foundation to support social projects. The center could be our pilot project." Olivia's eyes lit up. "Really? That would be amazing, Ethan, but are you sure?" Ethan took her hands in his. "Completely sure. Olivia, what you're doing here is extraordinary. It deserves all the support possible." Olivia stood up, walking around the desk to hug Ethan. "I don't know what to say. Thank you, Ethan, for everything." They looked into each other's eyes, the intensity of their emotions palpable. At that moment, they both realized how much they had grown together, how much they had learned from each other. "Olivia," Ethan said softly, "I know our marriage started as an agreement, as a lesson my father wanted to teach me. But it has become so much more than that. I've fallen in love with you." Olivia felt tears filling her eyes. "Oh, Ethan, I've fallen in love with you too. I never imagined this could happen, but here we are." They kissed, a kiss full of promises and hopes for the future. That night, as they walked back to their apartment hand in hand, Ethan and Olivia reflected on the incredible journey they had embarked on together. What had begun as an imposition had transformed into a love story and personal growth. Looking towards the future, they both knew they would face more challenges, but now they had the certainty that together they could overcome any obstacle. Their union, born from unusual circumstances, had become a transformative force not only for them but for everyone around them. As the sun set over New York City, Ethan and Olivia realized they had found something precious and rare, true love and a shared mission to make the world a better place. The sun rose over New York City, its golden rays illuminating the profile of the buildings and awakening the metropolis to a new day. On the balcony of their apartment, Ethan and Olivia contemplated the sunrise, their hands intertwined and their hearts full of emotion. Today was a special day, the day their one-year journey officially came to an end. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Olivia asked, her voice soft and reflective. Ethan smiled, gently squeezing Olivia's hand. Sometimes it feels like it was yesterday when we met, and other times I feel like I've known you my whole life. They looked at each other, their eyes reflecting the love and respect that had grown between them over the past months. What had begun as a forced agreement had transformed into a deep and meaningful relationship, changing their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. "Are you ready for the meeting with my father?" Ethan asked. Olivia nodded, a mixture of nervousness and determination on her face. "I'm ready. Whatever happens, we'll face this together." They prepared in silence, each lost in thoughts about what awaited them. The meeting with Jack Thompson would mark the official end of their agreement, and they both knew that the decisions they would make today would shape their future. When they arrived at Jack's office, they were greeted by Sarah, who gave them a warm smile before announcing them. As they entered, they found Jack standing by the window, his imposing figure silhouetted against the city skyline. "Ethan, Olivia," he greeted them, turning to face them. "Please, take a seat." They sat in front of Jack's desk, their hands instinctively seeking each other under the table for mutual support. "Well," Jack began, his voice grave and serious, "it's been a year since we started this experiment. I think it's time to take stock of what has happened." Ethan and Olivia exchanged a quick glance before Ethan spoke. "Dad, before you say anything else, there's something Olivia and I want to tell you." Jack arched an eyebrow, intrigued. "Go ahead." Ethan took a deep breath. "Olivia and we've fallen in love. What started as an agreement has become something real and profound. We want to stay together, not out of obligation, but by choice." Olivia continued, her voice firm despite her nerves. "Mr. Thompson, Jack, this year has been transformative for both of us. We've grown together, we've learned from each other, and in the process we've discovered that we share values and dreams." To their surprise, a smile slowly formed on Jack's face. "I must admit I was expecting something like this. I've been observing you both throughout this year, and I've seen the change in both of you." He stood up, walking around the desk to stand in front of them. "Ethan, when I devised this plan, my goal was to teach you the value of hard work and empathy. But you've surpassed all my expectations. You've become a man I'm deeply proud of." Then, turning to Olivia, he continued, "And you, Olivia, you entered our lives as part of a plan, but you've earned your place in your own right. Your strength, your compassion, and your vision have been an inspiration not just to Ethan, but to our entire family and company." Jack returned to his seat, his expression turning serious again. "Now the question is, what's next?" Ethan and Olivia looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them before Ethan spoke. "We want to continue our work, Dad. The training center is making a real difference in people's lives. And in the company, I want to keep implementing the changes we've discussed, making our practices more ethical and sustainable." Olivia nodded, adding, "And we want to expand our efforts. We've been talking about creating more centers in other parts of the city, maybe even in other cities across the country." Jack listened to them attentively, an expression of pride growing on his face. "I'm glad to hear that. In fact, I have a proposal for you both." He pulled out a folder from his desk and opened it. "I've been working on a plan to create a social responsibility division within the company. I want you two to lead it. You'll have the resources and support to expand your work, not just with the training center, but with other projects you consider important." Ethan and Olivia were speechless for a moment, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the proposal. "Dad, that's incredible," Ethan finally said. "Are you sure?" Jack nodded. "Completely. You two have shown that you have the vision and capacity to make real change. It's time for that vision to expand." Olivia, with tears of emotion in her eyes, spoke. "Thank you, Jack. This opportunity means so much to us. I promise we won't let you down." "I know you won't," Jack replied with a warm smile. As they left the office, Ethan and Olivia paused in the hallway, processing everything that had happened. "Can you believe it?" Ethan asked, his voice full of wonder and excitement. Olivia shook her head, a radiant smile on her face. "Barely. It's like a dream come true." They hugged tightly, the reality of their new situation settling over them. When they separated, Ethan took Olivia's face in his hands. "Olivia," he said softly, I know our marriage began in an unconventional way, but I want to make it real, official. Will you marry me this time for love?" Tears ran down Olivia's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes, Ethan. 1,000 times yes." They kissed, sealing their promise of a future together. Months later, in an intimate ceremony surrounded by friends and family, Ethan and Olivia renewed their vows. This time, not as part of an agreement, but as a celebration of the true love they had found. The training center, now expanded and thriving, filled with laughter and music as guests celebrated. Among them were many of the people whose lives had been touched by Ethan and Olivia's work. Former homeless residents, who now had stable jobs, Thompson Enterprises employees inspired by the ethical changes, and community members who had seen the positive impact of their efforts. Jack Thompson, standing in a corner, observed the scene with a mixture of pride and emotion. His plan, born out of frustration and hope, had borne fruit beyond his most optimistic expectations. Not only had it transformed his son into the man he always knew he could be, but it had brought Olivia into their lives, a force for change and compassion that had enriched the entire family. As Ethan and Olivia shared their first dance as a newly married couple, the guests surrounded them, their faces reflecting the joy and hope that this union represented. It was more than a wedding. It was the celebration of a journey of personal transformation, unexpected love, and a shared commitment to make the world a better place. When the music stopped, Ethan and Olivia looked into each other's eyes, their faces radiant with happiness. At that moment, they both knew that what they had found was rare and precious, a love born from the most improbable circumstances, forged through challenges and mutual growth, and destined to be a force for positive change in the world. As the sun set over New York City, bathing the sky in shades of gold and pink, Ethan and Olivia stepped out onto the center's balcony, their hands intertwined and their hearts full of hope for the future. They had begun this journey as strangers, united by an unusual agreement, and emerged as life partners, lovers, and partners in a shared mission to make a difference. Jack Thompson's experiment had ended, but Ethan and Olivia's story was just beginning. Together they would face the challenges to come, inspire others with their example, and continue to build a legacy of love, compassion, and positive change.